Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you rich, them will love to see you in a ditch. Them no want to see you panto, them no want you get more, so get more. Show them you not afraid them, one load them. Every human have a something that them destined. That is your destiny, so be what you ought to be. Even if no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly, them no want to see you touch sky, them no want to see you fly. Hey. Bling bling, now me call it King Kong. Every song I write, it's song. Every song I write, it's song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself, put nobody above myself. Energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see. What a colossal. Working and working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on, it's right on the corner. Hey, make way when I'm weird there. Hey, tell it you to them stay there. Hey, that is your destiny. To be what you ought to be. Even if no one you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly, them no want to see you touch sky, them no want to see you fly. Hey. Them no want to see you fly, them no want to see you touch sky, them no want to see you fly. Hey. Never wanna see you fly, never want you touch the sky, never. Reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you rich, them will love to see you in a ditch. Them no want to see you panto, them no want you get more, so get more. Show them you not afraid them, one load them. Every human have a something that them destined. That is your destiny, so be what you ought to be. Even if no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere, so you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly, them no want to see you touch sky, them no want to see you fly. Hey. Bling bling, now me call it King Kong. Every song I write, it's song. Every song I write, it's song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself.
We're gonna Mr. Mike. Good evening, everybody. I apologize for the lateness. I was out. I made an error in judgment. I trusted a dog, and I had to go run and find her. And I have to thank my wife for finding her. She got the touch, that I don't have. So the dog was located. And so once again, I apologize for the lateness. I was considering cutting a segment, but rather than do that, I may just deal with a little overtime tonight. Uh, this evening we're gonna get into the Munich security conference. Maybe a lot of persons don't know this. This is a big international conference that they have in Germany. Mr. Rubio was there, and in light of the fact that he made some interesting comments, and in light of the fact that he is going to be attending the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, I think he will be in Singapore for half a day. I thought that it might be interesting to hear some of the words that he had to say at that conference. After that, we are gonna listen some geothermal. I have a video that explains what geothermal is, what is being trying to be achieved. I have heard those in the authorities try to describe to the people what geothermal is, but I don't necessarily think that anybody has shown a video or broken it down simply. And this will be due to the fact that the persons who are in charge are not necessarily savvy in these type of field. I don't look at it as a slight upon them that they don't know everything. And certainly, I'm not telling you that I know everything, but I feel like it would be informative for the people if we could go through it together and learn a little bit more about geothermal. Even though I don't know everything, I have signaled, just like the politicians have signaled, that I think that this is the most important project that we are gonna have. So that is why that is why we're gonna engage with that this evening. Hold on, I'm just trying to make sure that the audio is up on any of the conversations we may need this evening. Okay, I don't need you, Mr. Jansen. You're done with. Anyway, so we're gonna go from, and the last one is we're gonna look at the candidates for St. John's. No government in Nevis has won without St. John's. Uh, Shout out to the people in the northeast. Massive snowstorm going up there. Our little 50 and 40 degrees is nothing compared to what I see up there. I have never seen snow in my life. I see cold the other day when it was in the teens, but I never see actual snowfall. So I hope everybody up there is safe. Hope everybody in the Caribbean is safe. Certainly hope everybody in Florida, Texas, etc. are safe. Wherever you are, especially in the UK as well. Anyway, we're gonna start off with, I think that is best that we do the geothermal first, actually. So let me find this. Nope, that's not it. Mm-mm. Okay, let me start with Rubio, since I'm not certain I see the geothermal. So we're gonna start off with that. This is the full speech. If he starts to ramble at any moment in time, we're gonna get him out of here. But this is the Secretary of State for the United States. The Secretary of State is basically the equivalent of what we would call the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So this person's job is to get out of the country. This is the job that our honorable premier had for his days when he was in Team Unity. So we're gonna listen to Mr. Rubio. first of all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany. The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction. Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe, one with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocks were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into two came down, and with it an evil empire. And the East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it is...
I love the fact that I told y'all a couple of weeks ago, this rule-based order, first of all, anybody use that per you? That is not working. If you hear our politicians start to say that, that is not working. He himself is saying, foolishness. We are not living in the world that, I guess, we're not living in the pre-1945 world, the pre-Second World War II world. All of that done. And he himself saying, all of these thoughts that, as Fukuyama wrote, that it was the end of history. Nah, we still got some history to go. So I appreciate the fact that he's saying the same thing. He's giving the same assessment I gave a few weeks ago. You can't look at it like that. We in a different times.
Cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, We have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies.
The climate cult aspect of what he just said, that's very interesting, considering when you hear our leaders talk, they keep on speaking about a sustainable island state. We are speaking about renewable energy. America feels like this is a constraint on their ability to grow. So I do feel like that is a point of contention between the leaders in the Caribbean and any message that is gonna be given them to them tomorrow from Mr. Rubio. Also of note, I don't think that you're gonna hear the word China one time in this conversation, but a large part of what this conversation about is about China. There is not really any major conversation you're gonna have in the world right now if you're not gonna consider, if you're not thinking about the People's Republic of China. And I'm not talking about the Taiwan part. I'm talking about the mainland, the China that Xi Jinping is running. So you're gonna see, you're gonna hear conversation about them vaguely when you hear building up of a welfare state, when you hear about communism. That's basically speaking about China and Russia to some extent, but we're talking about Asian countries for the most part. Because even in the Americas, you can't have the same conversation with regards to Venezuela or Cuba.
But to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together.
I'm kind of confused about the cohesion he's speaking about, because when you think about America, America has never been like one cohesive people. The America is the original melting pot, as far as I know. But anyway, we're gonna hear. And if you hear any snoring, that's Ginger. So give her a chance. She's sleeping right next to me.
America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is
how is this cohesion gonna work? I mean, I feel like the Caribbean islands, we do have some similarity, the language, We are mostly Christian societies, but we're not Europeans. So I don't know how this is gonna work out when it comes to the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. But we're gonna see.
This is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our council. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny. It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe, where which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution.
Also, when you hear him say like Europe must be proud of itself, this basically confirms don't expect reparations anytime soon. Don't expect an apology for that type of circumstance anytime soon. It ain't gonna happen. They want Europe to be proud of the things they have done. And greetings, Spiler, by the way.
It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future. Deindustrialization was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice, a decades-long economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence. And the loss of...
There is no shot that the industrialization was not gonna happen. We must remember we live in capitalist societies. Capitalists are gonna go where the labor is cheapest. I can tell you this right now. If South America suddenly has the capacity to produce items that Americans want cheaper, there will be China. The capitalists will congregate in South America. It just so happened that China happens to be a billion people, and its low wages can't be beat. It just became a situation where capitalists looked at the situation and were like, man, we have to go over there. India is emerging as an alternative. They have a very young population, and their population is also increasing. So if they could build up the capacity, I could see India being an alternative. When you look at Africa, and do not make the mistake of thinking that Africa is one country, Africa is a continent, but Africa is a continent that is growing rapidly. Africa is one of the few places, well, Africa as a continent, as I'm saying, the population is growing fast. Africa is on track to be the most populous continent within the next, I would say, maybe 30 years or so. So there will be gains to be made. Once again, this is gonna depend upon building up the technical capacity and industrializing in a way that becomes attractive to capital owners.
Our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis. Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia, it is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored, and we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain the nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran. That required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice. In a perfect world, All of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world. And we cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law which they themselves routinely violate. This is
I am not going to sit here and tell you that Russia or China have been model nations and have not violated international law. But there is a consistent theme with the great powers in this world, and all of them have at some stage in time violated international law. You have even heard recently the United States say they don't respect international law. They don't have any use for international law. China, certainly in the South China Sea, has violated international law and has issues with countries over there over certain steps they have taken. And it's just a continuation of what I was saying. These institutions do not serve the purpose that they were that they started under. And I do agree with Mr. Rubio that there needs to be some kind of reform. Otherwise, this is not going to work. I saw politicians speak about how we need to be like the UN, and I understood, and I won't say the name, but I understood just how out of touch with the current situation this particular politician is at the moment in time. So I hope that they are paying attention to these words. You don't got to listen stupid, Alan. You don't got to do that. Listen to the people who you trust in, to those who you say are special, and they are saying the same thing as stupid Alan. So who really stupid? Anyway, go ahead, Marco.
the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But
this is a major issue. Major issue. For 500 years, those 500 years, ladies and gentlemen, those were the colonial years. And different people, based on different backgrounds, went through those colonial years and saw them differently. It was not wonderful for the people, for example, who ended up in the Caribbean. We who are the ancestors of slaves and who were not on the other side making all the money in the world, we don't look at those 500 years warmly. We don't look at colonialism like it was a great and wonderful thing. So this here is a major point of contention.
in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would...
Once again, you see, he specifically said by anti-colonial uprisings. When we think about anti-colonial uprisings, it makes us smile. Even America was the original, we do not want to be a colony. So is an issue now So it's an issue now to hear this circumstance described in this particular way. How they were anti-colonial uprisings.
Transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then, as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now.
I don't know how we're going to be buying into this. I do not know how this is. Want to do it again? Colonialism? The building of empires? Yeah, we shall see.
Together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. An alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And one that does not maintain the polite pretense that our way of life is just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable. Because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy. It will restore to us a clear sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world. And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuela Reina lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation. And yet here I am, reminded by my own story that both are histories.
So this man speak about Scots Irish, speak about people from the Netherlands, speak about people from Spain, speak about people from France. And this goes back to what I said, America is the original melting pot, and fails to speak about the contribution of Africans to the building of this nation. What the hell? I'm gonna leave it alone.
And our fates will always be linked. Together, we rebuilt a shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then fought, then reconciled again. And we have bled and died side by side on battlefields, from Kapyong to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends.
Yeah, these Europeans are sad. This is the same press conference last year when JD Vance basically told them about the mother, and it feels like because Mr. Rubio has taken up a different tone, he has expressed how America would still like to do it with the Europeans, even that he just wants them to be strong and to be able to contribute. Feels like, because initially when he went into the speech, only 3 people stood up to clap. There was clapping, but only 3 people stood up to clap. By the end of the speech, the whole room is gonna stand to clap. It was like you walking into a situation where you feel like you and your significant other are gonna be in a fight, and it turns out no, you're gonna get a little piece. And so they are more happy than what you know than what they anticipated, because there is not as big of a fight as they anticipated. I think I'm done with Mr. Rubio. I think he's going over and over the same stuff, and we're cool off this. So I just wanted to show what he said. I wish that I could positively tell you that we would get a similar circumstance, but I do not think that this meeting, I think it starts tomorrow. I don't think that they're gonna be open meetings. I don't think that they're gonna be any open statements. It seems more like it's gonna be behind the scenes talk. And of course, I would imagine the head of CARICOM, who is the leader of St. Christopher and Nevis, is gonna come and say, all is wonderful, and he has never heard such glowing words. So we're gonna move over to geothermal. One of the reasons why, once again, why I thought it was is important for us to learn some stuff about geothermal is the leaders have never broken it down. I think that this next video is short but informative, and so we are gonna see some of the basics about geothermal, some of the challenges about geothermal, and also it is timely because the boss of geothermal, who is also the prime minister, has said that he has recently closed the bidding. So even when you heard the premier recently said that he closed the bidding, he ain't closed nothing. He's in charge of nothing. Geothermal is a federal issue now. And so when we want to know what is going on with geothermal, we will look to Dr. Joe for guidance on the geothermal issue. So this next video should be instructive about geothermal energy.
The deepest hole ever dug on planet Earth is right here, in northwest Russia. It's called the Kola borehole. Scientists started drilling in 1970 to study the composition of the Earth's crust, and presumably to see how deep they could go. Eventually, they reached a depth of almost 12 kilometers. That's roughly a third of the way through the Earth's crust on land.
It took them over 20 years to drill, just because of the hard rock and that depth. As they were drilling, there was this rumors that they were hearing voices down there, almost like the depths of hell. It's a little bit, it's crazy.
In the mid-90s, the project ran out of funding. The site was abandoned and the hole was sealed up. And the 12-kilometer record still stands. For now.
12 kilometers is not that far, right? Like, just think about that. We've actually never directly measured anything deeper than that. It truly is kind of the final frontier.
Well, okay, it's not like we have no idea what's down there. Coal, oil, and natural gas covers 80% of global energy demand after all. But there's one resource under the Earth that's often overlooked and maybe undervalued.
Drill anywhere on the Earth, and if you go deep enough, you'll find hot rocks. And so what you can do is turn that heat into power, electricity. And that's really geothermal energy.
Geothermal is the underdog of the energy industry, generating just 0.3% of electricity worldwide. It's mostly considered impractical outside of a few specific spots around the globe. But that's starting to change.
Geothermal energy opens up a new economic paradigm. Heat suddenly becomes a service and not linked to a commoditized fuel.
Hundreds of millions of dollars are pouring into startups aiming to tap the energy under our feet.
Geothermal is just too compelling to ignore. I like to say it's the largest source of clean energy on Earth.
And today, companies are looking to go deeper than we've ever gone before, using new drilling technologies that do this to solid rock. But are their new technologies really up to the task? And can they avoid the earth-shaking consequences when drilling goes deeply wrong?
So after the first little bit there, one thing we know we're looking for hot rocks. We're looking for heat in the earth, in deep in the earth's surface. That's what we're tapping into. It is a minor player right now. Oh yeah, one of the things that people need to know is the potential consequences. What are the dangers? This is not to say that they should not be looked at. As I have said, I certainly advocate for it. I think that geothermal is the most important project that we could do at this moment in time. It is clean energy. It is there 100% of the time. This is not like wind or solar energy. And so I am definitely for it. But before persons take a step, I feel like it is important that the authorities give the population the grace. I feel like they need to trust the population, and you should never, I do not think it is responsible to tell people that anything is 100% wonderful. There is no 100% wonderful. You need to also explain the dangers so that everybody could buy in and understand this is the potential good we could get, and there is also the potential bad we could get, so that people could prepare either way for what is to come. So let's tap into the Earth's heat.
Sure, are we just going on the tailgate?
Yeah,
okay.
on the...
That fellow in the bucket hat is Jim Folds. With his crew of geology students, he's constantly on the hunt for new hotspots, collecting data that geothermal companies can use to expand their operations.
Another thing before we get into the video to pay attention to is the equipment that they're using. We have already seen a lot of the drills, but also we need to pay attention to the various professions that are necessary to do geothermal. And when we're looking at the government, we need to see action in these particular areas. So let me send where some people go study geology. Geology basically is studying rocks. Let we go send some people, and their thing is to tell us all the different kind of rocks that are in Nevis. Well, St. Kitts and Nevis. How you get through them, all these things. They just specialize in rocks. They don't know nothing about sports, they don't know nothing about music, but they could tell us everything about the rocks, the composition of the rocks, where they are, thickness, all this type of thing. We need to be able to send our people. So geologists, definitely we would need some engineers as well. So I think all of these different professions and different disciplines would also have to be addressed by the authorities, so that the sustainable thing about this should not be that we're tapping into the earth, but that we are producing the people with the skills that could help us, so that we don't need to every minute send outside of the country for somebody else to tell us what to do.
Like butter, baby.
They use methods like this heat probe to check subsurface temperatures to find the best spots to drill.
Geothermal energy, in a way, it's so simple. It's just the Earth's heat. It's always there. At least it will be there for another couple billion years. The core is much, much hotter than the surface of the Earth, and there's sort of large convection cells that help to bring that heat up closer to the surface from deeper levels. The Earth produces enough geothermal heat in a given year, I think something like 10 times the amount of energy that just the United States needs in a given year. There are many areas on Earth that have relatively high levels of geothermal potential.
Countries like New Zealand, Indonesia, Turkey, and China all have plentiful geothermal resources. But Iceland is considered the true geothermal champ. The country transformed its volcanic heat into an economic windfall.
Iceland was a developing country in the early 20th century until it tapped geothermal energy. And once it did, it was able to use that energy and convert it into industrial output and become a richer country. It is today one of the most developed countries in the world with a very high per capita income. But there are many countries around the world that have access to geothermal power but have yet to really tap it. For places like Kenya, they're at an early stage of development. But if they can access more geothermal power, they can have cheap, clean electricity that can be converted into economic output pretty quickly.
The story of Iceland, in a nutshell, what they just said. These are the circumstances why I have said the most important project in St. Christopher and Nevis is geothermal energy. The most in the entire Caribbean is geothermal energy. The ability to turn that now into industry, the ability to supply your population, and to, this is one of the things that for example, the authorities want the population to increase. This is one of the things that could increase populations throughout the Caribbean. Bearing in mind, you have a country like Singapore. Singapore is smaller than the island of Dominica. Singapore currently is home to 6 million people. I do not think that Dominica has 100,000 people. If we could possibly get cheaper energy, I think it's possible that we could have bigger populations, because one, you're gonna have cheaper energy, and secondly, you're gonna have more opportunity. And I think that's a recipe to increase the populations faster than any bill in Parliament that will urge people to have more children. But that's my opinion. Could be wrong.
Sorry guys, it's a bit noisy because there are machines running, generator running, cooling system happening. So this point, steam is collected and sent to Sosian power plant. So from this point, you can see a green line supplied to all of the units in the power plant.
This plant is operated by Sosian Energy, a relatively new player that raised $91 million to build the 35-megawatt facility. It taps into a hotbed of geothermal potential known as the Rift Valley.
This portion of
91 million to build a 35-megawatt facility. Compared to the quotes that I have seen for the one in Nevis, I don't understand why the one in Nevis is like 3 times more expensive. I would need to hear further why that is the case. But at least we see that it is possible to build it with well, certainly a fraction of the cost that has been quoted.
the African continental shelf is actually separating from the rest of the continental shelf. The area where we are today, we're at the bottom of that rift, and that is why it's called the Rift Valley. And because of this, the internal Earth heat that we're using, that heat is much more readily accessible because the distance that we have to travel to tap into this heat is much lower than other areas in the world.
That lucky geography means that almost half of Kenya's electricity is generated from geothermal heat.
This plant generates electricity through what I call elaborate plumbing. These massive green pipes is what is delivering the steam from 2 to 3 kilometers deep. It is directed into turbines, and those turbines convert the heat into electrical energy. That electricity is then transferred to the national grid. This country has a potential of up to 10 gigawatts of geothermal resource. And right now, we've barely tapped 1 gigawatt. So we have a massive headroom that we need to exploit as a country. We can more than meet our national demand through just tapping into the geothermal resource. Industrialization does not happen on thin air. It requires electricity, and electricity needs to come from sustainable sources. And geothermal can be very central to that African industrialization story because it is something that is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
And that always-on quality is very, very special in the world of clean energy.
Solar and wind are the two variable sources of renewable energy that have exploded with hundreds of billions of investment in recent years around the world, but they're at the whim of the weather. That means that when it's cloudy, solar panels don't generate optimally, and when air currents are still, turbines for wind power are also not in operation. And geothermal, because it's available 24 hours, 7 days a week, provides that reliability that investors are looking for in a grid.
So on the surface, geothermal looks like an ideal energy source. Clean, dependable, good for another few billion years. But so far, it's only really worked in a few places. So why exactly is that? Well, it turns out that geothermal power needs 3 very specific conditions: heat, a reservoir of water, and a layer of porous rock. If you've got all 3, you're in business. No water? No big deal. Many geothermal plants simply pour their own fluid down into the hot rock. But that rock really has to be porous. If you can't get fluid flowing through the hot rock, you can't use the heat. Solid rock just won't work. So outside of the places where the rocks are hot and full of holes, geothermal is a non-starter. And that's why it only generates 0.3% of electricity worldwide, putting it in the other wedge, the least cool wedge in the whole chart.
I would assume that we fulfill the criteria for this. If we do not, I have not heard it broken down into those terms. But if we have not been able to find those 3 things, then I don't know what we're doing. But I would assume that we are moving forward based on the fact that we have been able to find the heat, we have porous rocks, and we're going to pour some water down in there to get the steam to turn the turbines. So I would assume that we fulfill the criteria.
But a new class of startup is aiming to make the wedge a whole lot bigger.
Fervo Energy is a next-generation geothermal developer. We've developed new technology that makes geothermal work in far more places.
To do that, Tim is borrowing technology from the oil and gas industry, where he used to work.
I didn't plan this, but the office building you can see right behind me was where I started my career, just through the window there at BHP's Houston offices, and started my career working as a drilling engineer in South Texas. So they just started getting into the shale boom. The light bulb went off for me that all the technological advancements that I was seeing in my day-to-day career in oil and gas were going to be just as transformative for geothermal drilling as they were for oil and gas drilling.
Hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, is a process of injecting highly pressurized liquid into underground rock, opening up gaps where none existed before, to then extract oil and gas. Combine fracking with geothermal instead, and you've got enhanced geothermal.
We create new fractures in the rock that essentially turns the subsurface into a giant heat exchanger, a radiator, and we pump cold water down the injection wells, flow over to our production wells where they come back up to the surface, picking up the heat, and then we capture that heat at the surface and use it to generate electricity.
Now, we've gone from 3 conditions to just 1, hot rocks, and that could open things up a lot.
Historically, geothermal.
Well, we have a further development. Now it seems like if we are gonna be able to do fracking, then we only got to find some hot stones underneath the earth. Once again, I have not heard this explained by any of the politicians. I do not know if fracking is the technique we are going to be using. We are only hearing about bids and not the technical aspects of this. And so, as I said, this was why I thought that it was important to bring this kind of information to the people. Maybe going forward, we could start to ask these type of questions about the project so that we could be even more informed going forward.
Was limited to very specific geologies. So the only places that you would see a geothermal power plant today would be in this certain hotspot in Northern California or some plants across Northern Nevada. What this map is showing is that thanks to the developments of enhanced geothermal system technology, much more of the country is developable. So even at today's cost structure, you can think about things that are in the reddish and orangish color and some of the yellow color as already being cost effective. So we're envisioning, more than 100-fold increase in the amount of geothermal that you can get, and you can replicate this for really any country.
Fervo debuted its technology with a small plant in Nevada in 2023. They're now building a full-scale power plant in the mountains of Utah.
All 400 megawatts will be online in 2028, and a 400 megawatt project is quite large. When we bring this plant online, it'll be responsible for roughly 10% of all the power generated in the state of Utah.
Producing that much clean electricity is a big opportunity, and others are taking notice. An hour south of San Antonio, Texas, in a region dense with fracked gas wells, another enhanced geothermal startup, Sage Geosystems, is building a test plant.
So, yeah, I spent 36 years in the oil and gas industry. It was all with Shell. I really wanted to be in the energy transition, and geothermal is that clean energy that best leverages my skill set.
One of the most exciting parts about geothermal energy is that it provides the opening for a just transition for people who work in the fossil fuel industry. A lot of people who are currently engaged in geothermal energy come from oil drilling, and it requires the same skill set of geophysicists and roughnecks who are willing to do hard labor of drilling and have a knowledge of the Earth's crust and how to bore beneath it.
It's 15% HCl, correct?
I don't know.
You're supposed to just say, yeah, of course it was.
Sure, definitely.
And 537 barrels.
17.1%.
My daughter definitely had an impact on me moving into geothermal. She worked for Sage before I worked for Sage. She likes to remind me of that.
I was like, yeah, you should come over because it's way funner over here. Oil and gas is kind of boring and you know what you're doing, but over here we're starting a whole new company. We're starting a revolution.
Is it awkward working together at all?
Yes, yes. I think it is.
Sage started out in 2020 with an enhanced geothermal approach similar to Fervo's. But they soon realized they could put their fracked wells to a different purpose. The space opened up underground can also work as a kind of battery.
In a simple term, we drill a well just like any oil and gas well, and we target a hard, non-permeable rock that we fracture using the same oil field technology, and it works like a balloon. We pump water in, it kind of airs up, and when we want to produce electricity, we flow it back. The pressure from the earth brings it back through our lines, turns a Pelton turbine, which in turn rotates a generator and makes electricity.
Storing energy like this could open a new line of business for geothermal companies by pairing with solar and wind.
In California and Texas, actually solar is out producing demand in the middle of the day. So you can take that precious clean energy, use it to store water under pressure, and then again produce that water at a time of day when the demand is higher and the people really need the energy.
Sage and Fervo say they've raised money from a mix of venture capital, government grants, and partners.
I think it's very important to note that the different types of renewable energy can be combined based off of what I said. So, and I think that that is a smarter aspect as well. Even though geothermal has the potential to be so wonderful, I think that we should be as diversified as possible. So I would still welcome wind energy and also solar energy. I think the more different options we have, anybody has, it just helps you. You shouldn't be locked into one thing.
Like drilling companies that stand to benefit from the growth of geothermal. All of this support has raised high hopes for the industry. The International Energy Agency predicts that by 2050, total geothermal power capacity could grow from 15 gigawatts to more than 800 gigawatts, meaning up to 15% of global electricity demand.
We're in probably the most dramatic growth curve ever experienced in the industry. Everybody who's working in the industry feels that we're part of a new revolution.
But before any of that can happen, geothermal has to overcome some challenges. For one thing, just getting into the game costs a pretty penny.
One of the issues with geothermal energy is that it requires high upfront costs, upwards of 90.
I think at this moment in time we have reached the challenges section, and we certainly, who have been hearing about geothermal from since the 2000s, would know this story. I just had to go back a little bit because I wanted the whole thing to flow. But I just wanted to indicate that we reached a section where we're going to get into some of the challenges that are faced during the development of geothermal energy.
Everybody who's working in the industry feels that we're part of a new revolution.
But before any of that can happen, geothermal has to overcome some challenges. For one thing, just getting into the game costs a pretty penny.
One of the issues with geothermal energy is that it requires high upfront costs, upwards of $90 million for a single borehole, compared to $1 million or less for a single gas generator. What that means in effect is that people who are doing the drilling need to change the economics by finding either states or municipalities that are willing to enter into a long-term agreement. It's being able to project 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future and have a reliable return on your investment. And the problem right now is that investors don't have confidence about the stability of power prices that far in the future.
For Sage and
So, based off of that, it seems like you need not only a visionary leader of the country, but you also need somebody who's going to have vision from the company perspective. And one of the other hidden challenges is that nobody knows what the cost of electricity is going to be so far into the future. So that is one of the hidden challenges, I would suppose, of geothermal energy.
Fervo, even getting their early projects off the ground has been a pricey proposition, and they'll need to keep attracting humongous piles of capital as they expand their operations over the coming years. And there's another problem that could pose an even bigger risk to the growth of the industry.
All sources of power have trade-offs, and the trade-off with geothermal is that sometimes, in the process of drilling, it can cause earthquakes. There was an incident in South Korea in 2017 when geothermal drilling led to an earthquake of the magnitude 5.5, which is one of the largest earthquakes that have hit South Korea.
한동대학교에서 안에 있는 그 한동 글로벌 학교의 고등학교 3학년으로 갑자기 막 땅이 흔들리고 초등학생들이 흔들려 보이는 거예요. 그러면서 막 어디선가 진짜 생전 처음 들어보는.
Like Sage and Fervo, The Pohang project used fracking techniques. That, plus a drilling site that was too close to a fault line, led to disaster.
지각과 지각 간의 어떤 힘이 부딪히는 응력이 폭발하면서 땅 속에 지진이라 할 수 있는 그 어떤 산사태라 할 수 있는 지진이 발생하는 원리입니다. 포항은
이제 그냥 조금이라도 그 지진이 일어났을 때 그 비슷한 소리만 나도 갑자기 이제 안 움직이고 밖에 나오려고 하는 것 같아요. 저도 이제
자식을 놓고 또 안전하게 살 수 있는가 어떤 그런 어떤 혼란스러움이었습니다. 그리고 외부에 포항 지진은 이제 위험한 지진의 도시다. 저 같은 경우에는 직접 그것을 경험하기도 했습니다.
As bad as the Pohang earthquake was, events like it are extremely rare. As far as we know, Pohang is by far the worst geothermal-triggered quake to date.
From what she's saying, earthquakes are a possibility, but it seems like it's not likely. It's possible, but it doesn't seem likely. I would assume that the authorities are certain that we are not close to any fault lines in the Caribbean. And it is also important, well, I heard this in a separate video, but they have already illustrated what they do is they dig into the earth and then they start to pump water into the rock at high pressure. Because it's fracking, I think we would need to adjust some of the laws to account for the fact that sometimes they send some nasty chemicals down there. I think that we're gonna have to be aware of that. We're also gonna have to be, and this is another reason why we need geologists. We need people who are gonna be able to study whether there are any seismic, whether there is any seismic activity going on down there as a result of whatever drilling techniques we use. As I say, sometimes when you're pushing in water down there at high pressure, you could move around even the rock, and you're changing basically the structure of the island. So it's just something to pay attention to. Once again, that does not mean that this should not be pursued, but we need to be aware of these challenges so we could put the right precautions in place. We could have the right laws in place, and we could also have the right people trained so that we could move accordingly and do this thing as safe as possible, so that in the end, it is actually sustainable.
But even a handful of accidents can deeply damage the reputation of an energy source. And natural gas fracking is already controversial for instances of groundwater pollution and even earthquakes.
We actually have monitoring stations at this facility and at our test well in Starr County. So for all of our projects, we will be monitoring for induced seismicity or earthquakes.
We're quite pleased now that over the course of 40 years of field development, we've never had any issues related to seismicity. So it's something that we take quite seriously.
As this industry scales, it is one thing that it'll have to be very careful about, getting permission from all the people who will be around that geothermal power plant and what kind of risks they will be facing as a result of having this in their backyard.
Despite the risks, geothermal's potential to become a dominant clean energy source keeps attracting prospectors. In fact, some companies want to not only keep digging, but dig even deeper.
There's companies out there that are starting to use what we already have in oil and gas. To unlock geothermal, I always nudge people and say, look, there's much more. This is the tip of the iceberg.
Carlos Araque, CEO of Quaise Energy, wants to drill as deep as necessary to tap geothermal heat literally anywhere on Earth.
Geothermal can truly repower the world. But we have to play the hotter and deeper game.
Enhanced geothermal only works down to around 3 or 4 kilometers. Going much deeper could open up far more drilling sites around the world and generate more power from hotter temperatures.
20 kilometers indeed opens up the whole world to geothermal. So twice as deep as an airplane flies high. If you can get to 20 kilometers, every part of the world has the geothermal potential of Iceland.
Of course, there's a reason no one's done this before.
At these depths that we're talking about, the type of rock that you encounter is what we call the basement rock. It's like these igneous rock that are like granite and basalt. So these are the type of really hard rock that for oil and gas with their conventional drill bit is very difficult to drill into it. So we're not trying to use conventional drill bits, we're actually trying to use microwave, or in this case, millimeter wave. So it causes the rock to vibrate, and it actually starts to then heat up to the point where it's melting and then ultimately vaporizing. So what we have here on display is a basalt paver that's 2 inches thick. We should be able to make about a 4-inch hole in about 90 seconds.
Using this terrifying beam of death, Quasar's engineers claim they might be able to drill down 10 kilometers in a few months. The Kola borehole, by contrast, took decades.
It's really, really hot.
But Quasar's approach is truly new and untested. While the company has been able to raise about $90 million of capital so far, some geologists are skeptical that geothermal power will ever be practical in the depths Quasar is aiming for.
Is it possible that it won't work? It's always the case. And also, it's also possible that things can get damaged in the field, just bad luck.
We're doing things that have never been done by anybody, ever. So there's always the possibility that we hit a hiccup, we hit a small brick wall, we fall flat on our faces.
It's for us to really tell the world that it does or does not work. I mean, it's really on us. So that's why I feel it's actually really interesting, a great job, because it's the unknown at this point.
It's too early to tell if these stabs into the unknown will really be transformative for the geothermal industry. But if the industry scales, it could be transformative for the business of energy.
Once you bore a hole from which geothermal heat is taken, you're not tied to the constant supply of gas or coal. That's dramatically different than our current economic model of generating heat.
And in the long run, it seems almost inevitable that we're going to harness geothermal on a bigger scale. We live on a literal ball of energy, and someone is always going to want to dig a deeper hole to get to it.
It would seem to me that geothermal energy is the perfect form of energy to continue to reward persons who have electronic vehicles by giving even more incentives to persons to utilize those type of vehicles. I saw recently that the government is giving you more incentive for getting an electronic vehicle. I think that you would not have to pay the 84.5% duty. I think they cut it down. I think they cut it down to 50%. I still think that could lower. I still think that they need to remove the environmental levy completely from EVs and also from hybrids. In the case of hybrids, I would offer some kind of credit for persons who could show you that they're not going to the gas station, they are utilizing the charging feature of their hybrid and not necessarily going to the gas station. Those persons, I think that there's scope for doing that. but it seems like the politicians are listening at the very least, and they are attempting to incentivize persons for utilizing electronic vehicles. So geothermal would be perfect. I'm gonna be cutting the premium segment because I would have to go through. I'm fine where I am, and I don't want to do that. Whereas with Pat, it seems that where we were has been saved already. And bearing in mind the press conference is tomorrow, and tomorrow I should be, as long as all is well, I should be here with y'all. So we have an alternative coverage of the press conference. So I think it works out. We're not gonna be flooded with the premiere, so we could get to Pat and her plans from her most recent time. Speaking, I think this is your voice, so we're gonna listen to Pat now.
In that Dr. Ju was proposing, and I don't know, I have not seen the elements of the proposal. We don't know yet exactly what he's about to propose to his cabinet, let alone to bring it to the national level in Parliament. But he recognizes that we have a problem with population dynamics. All of our people are getting older. Our population is getting older, and we don't have what people generally talk about, the replacement rate, meaning for every person that goes out, you need to have X amount of persons to replace them. And so I looked at what is going on, or what has been going on from 2017, though, because I kind of like to cover the period of time that this current NIA has been.
Before she gets into the statistics, the fact that people are getting older is also the reason, and y'all need to pay very good attention to this. I saw a projection that says by 2040, Social Security is not going to be able to pay out the benefits. There is not going to be enough money available to Social Security to pay out the benefits. So as I had indicated some years ago, they're going to have to raise the age of Social Security, and they are looking at raising the amount of contributions. I don't think that anything has been done yet. That's one of the reasons why I think that they wanted to also increase the wages to kind of get that up as well, and to make people feel good before they turn around and say, hey, we're going to need more from you. So pay attention to that aspect. By 2040 is not as far away as you feel. In about 15 years, Social Security is not going to be able to pay persons their benefits based off the fact that people just living longer.
Because I don't want to give them the blame for what would have preceded them, but in their current circumstances, they ought to be responsible for their term of service. And so I kind of most of the times pivot to including or starting my data analysis in 2017, unless otherwise indicated. So in Nevis, we seem to have had a steady birth rate, in that we've been seeing from 2017, 98 new births. And up to 2023, we were having 98. During that period between there, we had some slight increases. So there would have been some fluctuations, in that 108 in 2018, then it dropped down to 89. And so it has fluctuated, but it has kept quite steadily close to the 98, births. And on average, it would be just panning out to be about 100 births during that period of time between 2017 up to 2023. Now in St. Kitts, they're more, it's a bigger population, of course, and maybe a little more prolific than us. So they've had numbers like 554 births in 1 year. Yes, in 2017, they had 554 births. However, By 2023, births had fallen off considerably down to 388. So you compare in 2017, 500 plus, and now in 2023, just 300 plus. It means that there's cause for concern. And so I join Dr. Ju in that there is need for some kind of intervention. All right? There's need for intervention. However, I don't know, and that is why I keep asking these people in charge to start studying our population, because we don't know why, what are the factors that affected the birth rate during that period of time. Because remember, we had the period to deal with when we had social distancing, you know, so if you were social distancing and you were not in the same family, and a lot of males, you know, who have children, don't necessarily have them in the same household. You know, the man live one place and the woman live someplace else. And so maybe social distancing had something to do with it. I'm just saying, maybe not. So we need to start examining these things. And so it could as well be that we've had economic hardships that have forced women to reconsider their participation in this breeding program, because that is essentially what it is. And so it is not something that happened in isolation. In order for us to address matters and address them efficiently and effectively, it means that we must know what the cause is, or else we're just shooting in the dark. So
I have criticized those who are in power for this very reason, for not attempting to understand beyond what is happening, but to understand how and why it is happening. I will be consistent and let you know, Miss Bartlett, you are also responsible, especially when you are going to say that you agree with Dr. Joe and you agree with our premier as well, that there needs to be some sort of intervention. If that is the case, when you are moving amongst the people, it would also serve you well to ask the young ladies and the young men, you know, all young people in general, what, why, how, because you would also be responsible for formulating some type of policy that is going to stimulate population growth. I hear you suggesting reasons. I do not know the reasons. I would say in general there needs to be more opportunity created. Young people, one of the things that I do not think is appreciated by the older generation is that a typical young person at this particular moment in time cannot leave home in the early 20s and be like, you know, I'm gonna go and build a house. I have the money and the ability to go and build a house. Whereas in the older days, that was something that was possible. So there has to be, in my estimation, the ability of people to feel like they could get a job. They don't even concern if they get fired. They're gonna find a new job, and they're gonna have enough money to go and take care of their responsibilities, pay mortgage if they have to, feed themselves, live with dignity, be able to clothe the children, educate the children, all these different responsibilities that come when you do have children. So I don't see why there is a comfort, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm prejudging, and she is gonna roll out a cadre of ideas that will stimulate childbirth. We shall see. Sometimes I do that. So we shall see. I just feel like I constantly hear the issues from both sides, but we never get the resolution. We never get the way how things are gonna be better. In which case, I think that is ultimately what is gonna have people saying, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have some more kids.
Dr. Joe, before you come with your proposal, make sure they are grounded in facts. Make sure that they're informed by the data. So if it is that it was only a period over the COVID time that we had a reduction in the thing, you need to know why. And like I was proposing, it might not even have it might not even be a factor really, but maybe social distancing. And so we work forward and say, well, it's not like we don't have all the elements in place to continue to replicate and do what we came here to do. But maybe it is just that the circumstances at the time, and maybe it doesn't really merit going into the house with information.
If once again she's gonna be critical and she's gonna say that, well, politicians should be studying the population, wouldn't it be more prudent for her to study beyond 2017 and not that this is the time she's saying when her competitor entered into politics? But it's kind of hypocritical for you to say, hey, we need to be holistic in our approach, but me, I'm only going to focus on the time my competitor became premier. That's not holistic. Do so got to like so too. If do so not like so, as I say, you won't look like a hypocrite. I mean, I think you're on that.
Like that, because it just might just be a moot point. So that is the reason why I keep saying, let us be guided, let us be data driven. Or if you think that we do, it can't be emotional. It can't be you look at something and say, oh, my boy, you know what happened? In 2017, you have 505, and in 2022, we're down to 399. 2022, it's a different year. Circumstances are different. So, Dr. Joe, please, when you come, make sure that you have data and you inform us as to why is it you're proposing, what you're proposing, and let's see if it's something that we can buy into. Because if you cannot convince people, if it is that it is economic hardship, you're going to have to make sure that the economy turns around first before you come tell people, well, I think you should have 2.1 children instead of 1.6, that the rate that we're currently going at. So please, no guesswork. Make sure that the measures that we put in place make sense. All right?
She's not even providing possible solutions based off of the different things that she say it could be. Like, if she's saying that it's an economic problem, then it seems like me, the task for Ms. Bartlett is to say, hey, under me, we're going to improve the economy by doing X, Y, Z. And based off of doing these things, we feel like people are going to be more comfortable. And therefore, they are going to have more children. So I'm just kind of confused at this rhetoric.
Today when I was looking through as it relates to the birth rates and all that, and the reason why, like you have low fertility and all that, I was informed that in 2021, the European Parliament, they conducted a study, because normally they have what they call a research service. So, that is a part of the parliamentary apparatus. And so they don't just bring bills, they make sure that they research it. So when they come and they speak with authority on whatever the matter is. And so they wanted to make a decision as it related to cell phone use or usage. And I think they were at the point that they were contemplating introducing 5G for cell phones. And so they did a study. And what this study came back to say, because almost every other authority that you looked at, people were saying things like, well, cell phone use does not affect people, you know, your health or anything like that. But the study turned out to suggest that indeed these forces or these elements, these things could indeed cause a reduction in fertility in men. And so if you're using cell phone, they're suggesting now that you don't keep it in your pocket next to your genitals and or your private parts, sorry, to be more politically correct. And so these are things that
before the holiday gets in, if you see that the European Union does research before they debate bills, one of the things that you could do here, if you don't have the information, is to suggest to Parliament that we use committees. We are awful at using committees in St. Christopher and Nevis. And in the Caribbean as a whole, you do not generally hear parliamentarians say, hey, we have formed a committee and we are going to be looking at an economics issue, a social issue. So one of the things that could happen, just like happens in the European Union, you form a committee, you give them the power to go out and to do the relevant studies. They could be the ones who interact with people to find out the reasons why less children are being born. And when they have their results, they present their findings in some form of report to not just cabinet. They would present it to all elected officials, and thereafter some kind of policy decision could be made. Then you could pass a law. I think that is a reasonable course of action to take.
Evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice.
Steve, good night.
Hi, good night.
Good night, Honorable Janice Daniel and Miss Bartlett. Good night.
Good night,
This
Daniel.
is ladies' time. Oh, yes. Don't care where the bad man come with tomorrow. This is ladies' time. And a warning, Miss Bartlett and Miss Daniel, we have work to do. Colin and Carly is doing a very good job to steer the ship because I see success. I see success in the making. This is ladies' time. We're going to get the read all the vagabond. And Mrs. Daniel, do not leave secession out in individual mind. Preach secession because we are seeing clearly from the days of Robert Bradshaw that they don't care. They don't care about the little that over there. And I will defend my father's land. Fairness, that is where we want. If the vagabond man want fairness for division, I jam down want fairness for division. And he must come under Timothy Harris when he return. It must come because Janice, Jody, and Patricia Bartlett will be there. I know they will be there in the federal parliament because they're hearing the cry. According to the great Ayatollah, the writing is on the wall. We don't hear the cry in Bastille. If they think that we're going to sit down and ball the lie, Mrs. Bartlett and Miss Daniel, we're on the way to victory. But we have to work. Look at the national, what do you call it there? National security. Look at the kind of immigrants just walking in Zinkets. They use the plane, because they feel they could tease an election again, and they ain't gonna work, It's not gonna work. Have a good night, Steve.
Aye.
And Miss Bartlett.
You too. Thank you.
Julie and her husband in St. Croix. That's my first cousin. Two brothers' children.
Okay.
Julie, your good friend. That's my cousin. Good night, Julie. This is Jam Dong. I ain't gonna leave this. They don't get away with them vagabond behavior no more. Especially the dirty boy over there. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes.
And we will rally them to the ground. We will rally them. This is women time. Have a good night.
Good night.
I am not going to support any division government in any secession claim if I do not see the infrastructure being put in place to support such. Nevis is not responsible for their own security. They don't have any sheriffs or anything. So it's not gonna happen overnight. And I don't think that it should come down to an interim a vote to determine, well, okay, all right, well, we're gonna look some police now. Nope. Can't work. So if any government in Nevis is gonna be pushing for secession, I want to see them start to push the boundaries of the Constitution and to take some responsibilities in order for me to say, well, okay, all right, let's go. That, for me, is just emotional manipulation. But as from the caller, this ain't anything that she has said. We're going to hear if she has any response to that perspective.
Thank you.
Yes, so yeah. So, like I said, he must get the data. But the thing is, though, I think Dr. Jew was trying to make the case at some point, and I think the premier over here also, that our population is not as big as they think that it could be. Nobody could tell you what is the ideal, you know, what is the ideal population that we ought to have, what the ideal number is. But what we need to, though, recognize is that when Dr. Jew is saying that he's going to implement or at least propose something for the birth rate, by the same token, he has to understand if you're going to have an equation, you have balance on both sides. So if it is that your live birth rate is going down, you have to look, and you're looking at about stability in your population, you have to also look at the death rate. So what we have is that the live births are going down, but the death rate is going up. So we have to pay attention to making sure that we have an intervention for both. You can't just do one and not the next. Then it's like, why are you prioritizing people getting children, but you're not prioritizing making sure that people don't die earlier than they ought to? And a lot of us, and I've seen it within recent times, a lot of deaths, people are saying, oh, it's untimely, because we are not expecting most of our population to go before they get that 3 scores and 10. And a lot of people within recent times, a lot of the funerals that have been occurring around here, people are not making it to 3 scores and 10. And so we have to look at the death rate.
I dispute this. The average age of the population is going up. Well, at this moment in time, I said so. A couple of weeks ago, I think the average age right now for person, the average lifespan is 77 years old. That is phenomenal. On an average. That's not to say that there are people who are not getting there. But on an average, to be 77 years old, I think that's higher than the United States now. So I dispute that claim. I do not feel like that is consistent with the facts on the ground.
We must do something so that we can solve the equation. You know, so we have to, if we do something on one side, we have to do something on the other side. So we have two serious issues to attend to. And like I said, we need to study both, the cause of the low birth and the cause of the deaths. Because this thing is very unsettling for me, not knowing why is it we have so many cancer cases. Maybe it isn't, and I don't want to speculate and say, you know, what it is, because like I said, we get in trouble when we do that. A lot of people are thinking that 5G would be it, and that is what is going to cause the cancer, but we don't know. And so we have a population, and we can invite people to study our population because it's small enough, and our turnover rate seems to be high enough too, because we are checking out earlier. And so I think that our population would be an ideal population to invite some study group, some research group to come in and help us out as it relates to that. And so the population continues to be an issue on both sides, just because I think they're trying to solve the debt situation. And so they seem to think that if you increase the number of people here, then somehow you'll have more people in the economy would be bigger without introducing a logical framework for economic development that really is the foundation for sustaining any population. Because if we look at Haiti, and I know that it has been in the news in recent times, and not so glowing a report based on comments that we would have made, or we are responsible for having made at our PM level. They have 13 million people, and it's not like they don't have people, but the economy is bad. You have to fix the fundamentals.
Good evening, caller. Wayne, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Manners and to Ms. Bartlett.
Good evening.
Let me ask you a question. How if you sell 60,000 passports, what do people be? So how could the population going down when you sell passport and I say them a citizen? What's the truth?
I think they're thinking of productive citizens. The CBI people who you speak about, we have heard our political leaders say on many occasions, some of them have never been to St. Kitts and Nevis. They're bought into that for a specific purpose. But are they being productive within the Vision and Kittian society?
Well, I think it probably goes, if I'm, sorry, go ahead, caller.
Yeah, but that is the same problem that the American administration is having. Why are you having people being citizens and not productive citizens? Why you sell your passport to somebody who never come to the country? Does that make any sense to a foolish person? Go ahead, Ms. Bartlett, I listen to you.
Okay, well, when we're doing population census, it's something different. We're talking about people who are residents. So when I reference population, we're talking about people who actually live here, the residents who live here. Because if we were to include the population of all the persons who who were born here and maybe migrated, then it would be an awfully, large number, considering. But I don't think that we take the economic citizens into consideration. We're talking about, because when we do a census, when we go down, we do head count. That is what it is. In 2011, we did a census and we had 47,000 plus people. And in 2021, we went around and we counted the number of persons here again, and we got a population of 51,000, meaning that those are the persons we are making reference to, who are going to sustain, who participate in the economy, and those are the persons who we make reference to, and not the persons who just bought a passport or may have gotten a passport because of birth or whatever other circumstance that would entitle one to hold a St. Kitts Nevis passport.
That is one of the concerns that citizens who have spoken to have in Nevis, because what they're saying is that these citizens who buy passport has all the rights as a citizen as we here. But you're saying they're not contributing as we here, so then that is not a balanced thing. This thing needs to be re-looked at, this citizenship by investment. We can't have people being a citizen, being able to come by the whole of Nevis. And that's the only contribution, because they have money, they could buy as much land as possible, because they have all the rights and privileges, like me and you.
Of course.
So how does that make it fair?
It's not fair.
These are the questions that people are having.
It's not fair, but guess what? It was for us. That is what has, I think, floated our boat for a while. That is what has kept this economy going. The CBI, money is coming in from the CBI, were monies that we had been dependent on for years. And it has come into, close scrutiny within recent times, and we're talking about two different issues now, though. But yeah. You're right that it is not fair that they have all the rights and privileges if they're not contributing on the same basis, but the same argument can be made of people who are different categories of persons who are themselves citizens, whether by birth or marriage or whatever, and they don't live here and they don't contribute, You know, I'm not saying
have you
that
been-
some don't. Just saying all with passports don't necessarily contribute.
Yeah, because have you been looking at the situation of Canada? Because one of the things they are saying in Canada is that people are misusing this thing, because what it does, they use the citizenship and then go in and ask for immunity. And this is one of the reports been coming out of Canada, that people who are getting citizenship are using these things and going into countries and saying that they can't go back to their countries of birth because they have been, oppressed. And that is one of the things that Canada has been talking about, looking at cracking down on their borders. So that is why I'm saying that it doesn't make sense. You have a citizen of St. Kitts Nevis living in Canada for the rest of their life and not, So what's the whole thing? Is just about a money thing?
Well, for some people it is. For some, that's why I call it economic citizenship. It is just about the money. And then,
we
like
need
I
to
said,
look at ourselves. This is not good enough for our people. This might be good for the country, but not for the people.
I hear you.
Because
I realize I stick up in the corner. That's also. And really and truly is right on time, because I was about to shut it down. The only thing I would like to ask about is citizenship by investment story. I have heard the Premier say over and over that when you have economic citizenship, you do not have the right to vote. And I would love if somebody at the press conference would ask the Premier, or if somebody at the round table would ask the Prime Minister to point them towards the law that says that you are not allowed to vote when you have economic citizenship. It would help me greatly, and I would echo their words until I could find it for myself. I would not be able to go along with such. But as I say, it would help me greatly. I think we're gonna shut it down there for this evening. Hopefully my computer work with me much better tomorrow. It's been sexy the last couple of weeks. I don't know what the hell just happened. But tomorrow morning should be joining you 10 a.m. your time, 9 a.m. my time. What are going to be like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock over in Europe. Yeah. So thank you everybody for watching and for participating in the show. Once again, I'm sorry for my lateness and sorry for how we have ended. But you see me and I give something. I hope persons were able to learn about the geothermal, see how much jobs, how many different specialists the island would need to make it sustainable. Any island really would need to make it sustainable. So I thank y'all once again for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Every song I write, hit song. Every song I write, hit song. Tell me something, am I wrong? To believe in myself, put nobody above myself. Energy, energy, build your energy. Love, charity, what a sight to see. What a sight to see. What a colossal. Working and working and working to prosper. What you gonna stop for? Keep on it's right on the corner. Hey. Make way when I'm weird there. Hey, tell the hater them stay there. Hey, that is your destiny. Maybe what you ought to be. Even though you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no want you reach nowhere. So you have to find a way. Them no want to see you fly.